Good afternoon to you, Mark Sutton with HurricaneTrack.com here with your Hurricane Outlook and discussion for Tuesday, the 25th of August, 2015. I've got a little bit of a cold today, so bear with me. I might sound a little nasally, so let's just deal with it. Taking a look at what's going on in the tropics, of course, we have Erika, which has already only been around, less than 24 hours, and has created quite a bit of hype and excitement, if you will, on the internet. A lot of weather geeks excited to see the potential for a hurricane to track. Most people know that they have very negative consequences when they hit land. I think people understand that, but nonetheless, to have something out here, and again, out in the main development region where Danny came from as well, is interesting. So as of the 2 o'clock intermediate advisory, winds are 45 miles per hour, pressure 1,003 millibars, and Erika chugging off to the west here at about 20 miles per hour. Taking a look at the forecast track from the 11 o'clock advisory this morning, just to kind of rehash, you probably already know this, but we got to ease into this, get all the context, if you will. Looks like maybe a threat to the Northeast Caribbean, and then after that time, possibly into the Bahamas as a hurricane. And that is, of course, where all this ramping up of excitement has come from. Twitter had run amok with people posting single snapshots of the European model last night, snapshots of the HWRF, which is the Hurricane Weather Research Forecast model, all kinds of stuff out of context. And yeah, it's interesting to do that, kind of like putting a 30-inch snowfall forecast for Philadelphia and New York out there 8 days away. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's not, whatever model that is. So let's take a look at the facts, because that's what we have here and now, is facts in front of us. And one of those facts is we have basically half of a tropical storm here. The northern semicircle of Erika, you can clearly see very well defined circulation with those low-level clouds, but it's missing a lot of deep convection. What little deep convection there is on the south side, and that's a problem for the system. None of the models were indicating that it would be a hurricane in this area, so it's not surprising, but that's a negative. One of the things it has going for it, though, it seems to be a larger, more vigorous area of energy, heat in the atmosphere, if you will, that encompasses a larger part of the ocean, and it's taking up more real estate. That can be for and against it. The pros of that, for it to survive, it's larger, it'll take more to kill it off. The cons, what dry air there is through here, and there's still some out there, with it being this large, it's able to reach out farther and pull that dry air in. It just makes sense. So it's kind of self-destructing a little bit. This region, even though it's produced Danny, which the leftovers are here, finally brought some much-needed rain to parts of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, now headed for the Dominican Republic. But we had Danny form out here in the main development region, then Erika, this system trying but probably going to fail, and then another one's coming off Africa. So even though this region has produced kind of unexpectedly this year, it's still fairly hostile. So let's don't get ahead of ourselves in thinking that, hey, it's 2010 all over again, or whatever, that we're going to have lots of storms coming out of this region. The other thing going for Erika, warm sea surface temperatures out ahead of it, and if the track follows, suit somewhere like this over the next several days, even warmer sea surface temperatures, and in fact not just warm at the surface, but fairly deep below the surface. This upper ocean heat content, I talk about this a lot. I'm going to zoom in. Once Erika gets into this region right through here, assuming that it survives, okay, this may not survive, and I'm going to show you why in a minute. I want to research a hurricane and be out there to put our instruments in it more than anybody, but at the same time, I have to be realistic and understand that there may not be a hurricane to put anything in, and I can show you both why there may not be and why there could be. And this is certainly part of the, again, a check mark in the pro column, very warm upper ocean heat content all the way along the southeast coast as well. So, there's definitely fuel. Dry air, a little bit of it still near Erika, but boy, the rest of the Atlantic has just abated from the Saharan air layer, and this sucker coming off, we're going to have to watch. This maybe not so much. So it's got a few things going for it, does Erika, but one of the things it has not going for it, that has not changed, and is a result of the El Nino season that we're in. These El Ninos that come on, these strong ones, create, through processes that are very difficult to explain, these enormous areas of upper level cyclonic flow. These TUTs, as we call them, tropical upper tropospheric troughs. This huge area kind of pinched off in the atmosphere of strong wind shear and sort of this inverted trough-looking system out over the Atlantic that's pretty much there all hurricane season. And on the southeast side of this, you get these upper-level wind cores coming through 20, 30, 40, 50 knots. And Erika is going to have to go right through that. Now, this changes. It abates, it can pinch off and lift out to the northeast, and then you're left with a large ridge of high pressure in the way, similar to what happened the year that Andrew formed. I'm just using that as a similarity, that's all. So these things do change. It's not absolutely concrete etched in stone there, but it's in the way of Erika right now. Erika located right through here, and that very strong core of upper level winds going this way on the order of 20 to 30 knots or so. If it can get through that and into this region here north of the Greater Antilles, then it may have a shot. And the models basically take it there. All kinds of different model outputs here, and the envelope is very impressive how narrow it is, even in the 5-day range. That's a pretty small cone, you got to admit. Some of these models now just touching southeast Florida, but it has to survive this area right through here. Let me just go in and kind of highlight that. If Erika is still around between 60 and 65 degrees of longitude here, somewhere in this area, then we could have something to really be concerned with down the road in this area. But before we worry about this area, it has to get through this first. And I mean that. I mean, this is a tough season for storms coming out of the deep tropics. The intensity guidance, this is very interesting. In the last few runs, this is the 18Z run, so this is fairly new. Look how basically flat the intensity guidance is for the most part over the next few days, all the way out to about 96 hours. It's generally flat. Nothing gets it above tropical storm strength. Then at day 4 and beyond, you start to see this pretty significant ramp up. And so that tells us that it's going to stay in a really negative environment. In fact, some of the models dip it right in here at about 60 hours. Where would it be in 60 hours or so? Probably going right through this shear zone, something like that. So it's going to struggle. Now, let's compare this to the 12Z intensity models, which had more intensification a little bit earlier, and only a little bit, maybe 12 hours earlier. So it's not that great of a difference, and they all still seem to have this pretty significant ramp towards category 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, at the end there, as you can see. In fact, you could argue that more of them are showing at about the 96-hour mark and beyond this pretty substantial ramp up than we saw at the 12Z run, where it was later in the run that it was intensifying that much. I don't know, it's just, one model run here, one model run there, but the overall idea that this doesn't get going until about day 4 is still on the table. Now, before I say goodbye, let's take a look at the Pacific, just to, we don't want to ignore what's happening. A disturbance here well to the south of Mexico, and this will more than likely, in fact, let's just click on the old 5-day graphic, because it shows us exactly what we want to see here. Whoops, it took me to the Atlantic. That's weird. This will be going away from land, so that's good, paralleling the coast, but several hundred miles away from the coast. Hawaii is basically going to be shot at this year, if you will, by tropical cyclones because of the very warm North Pacific, but because of the randomness of each one of these and how small the island chain is, it's hard to say if one of them is going to hit. Nothing's threatening right now. If we have something headed that way, we will certainly discuss it. The focus right now will be on Erika in the Atlantic and what happens over really the next, I would say, 60 to 72 hours. And if it doesn't die before that. So there you go. That's my thoughts on it. I can't be any more honest about it. If Erika is still around by Friday, then yeah, we'll probably be talking about one heck of a Labor Day week coming up, to be sure. Otherwise, it's going to be butterflies and rainbows and sunshine, and that's just the way it goes in an El Nino year. You typically don't have big development, so we'll see. That's it. That's all I got. All right, thanks for tuning in. I do appreciate it as always. If you haven't checked out my blog series on Hurricane Katrina minus 10 years, going back and looking at it 10 years ago, go to hurricanetrack.com and check it out. I've got 2 days out of the 7-day series. It's called 7 Days in August, and I've got day 2 up today. Lots of text there. It's almost like a mini book, if you will. So read that, and there's some pictures in there and whatever. And I think you'll kind of get an insight of what it was like for Mike Watkins and myself, my colleague Mike, and I to study Hurricane Katrina up close and personal, from the way that we handled things in Florida all the way over to Mississippi eventually. So check that out at hurricanetrack.com. And I'll continue that series tomorrow right on until the conclusion at the end of the 7 days. And you'll see how everything turned out if you don't already know the story from us, from our perspective. Have a good rest of your Tuesday. Thanks again for tuning in. Mark Studd of hurricanetrack.com. I'll talk to you tomorrow.